Here. Hello. Hey. So, I was with some clients the other day, and they said, if we think our greatest innovation, our greatest propensity to grow the company is right here within the walls of the company, we're so wrong because it's not even here, it's like way out there. It's some kids in some garage that's going to do fascinating things in the future, and we're going to work for them one day. And so when I saw this at my local coffee shop in Richmond, Virginia, I think it's this kid. So this is what it says. Free strips of paper. This is just posted on the community board. So disruptor? Yeah. No, anonymous, right? Anonymous. May be used for bookmarks, writing down his or her phone number, a healthy snack, litter, or even a place to put your bubble gum or boogers. Just freaking genius. You gotta love that. Like this was worth my day to the coffee shop, and then a couple lines today were worth my trip to London. And so you think the disruptors are right in your office? They're not. They're those kind of guys right there. And I want to hire that guy so badly I can taste it because I'm gonna work for him the day I hire him. I work for you now. So where's Khalid? Is Khalid in the room? Khalid, is he? Can you just come right here for a second? So. Really quickly, this just ran through my bones and my body as I was hearing Khalid talk. And I've been going to TED for a number of years, like a lot of us. And Chris Anderson did something this year that I was a little bit suspect of, I have to tell you. He stood up about a third through the first day, and he said, okay, everybody, I'm Chris Anderson. I'm the boss. I'm the man. I'm the everything. I'm the legend. And, I've been watching all these speakers get up, and if you feel something when they're talking, and when you feel something run through your bones, and it's emotional, and it grabs you, and it's inspiration, and it's passion, and it's humanity, and it's real, what do? You don't gallery clap. Right? You don't give them one of these. You stand up and you give them the freaking standing ovation you've ever given anybody to let them know that what they said was very important. And I could have listened to Khalid talk about the moment in the kitchen with his mom and dad with the telephones and watching the tank from 200 meters away and hear about what he saw and what he experienced and what you experienced is, how old are you, Khalid? 28 years old, and then for him to get up in front of a TED stage that's going to be simulcast and broadcast all over the world and share with the world what he saw, I felt that. So I would like you to what was your closing line? Just say thank you. To you. Woo! Thank you. Sometimes it's just. And I was sitting there, I was like, yeah! And I was a little contrived when Chris said that. Then I'm like, the whole time at TED, people were like, should I stand up? Should I not stand up? Should I stand up? Should I not stand up? And I just didn't stand up for anybody after that. I was like, it's all contrived now, so don't do it. So just blur your eyes very quickly and imagine the world and imagine it's got this big thought. Okay, really, blur your eyes, blur them, and kind of see the globe. And it's kind of got a little spin to it, and it's a little rotation, a lot of earth, a lot of blue, a lot of nice, a lot of beauty, glow of the sun. And then it has a thought bubble above it, and it's saying something. And I'd like you to fill in this blank with it's feeling, needing, and wanting. What is the world feeling, needing, and wanting right now? Say it. What's it feeling, needing, and wanting? It's feeling what? Love. It's feeling what else? Pain. What else? Needs a break. Needs a deep breath. Man, I just need a deep breath. What else? Anger. It feels anxiety. It feels passion. It feels hope. It feels frustration. It feels litigious. It feels all these, what other words? Laughter. So it feels all these kind of things. And so what I want you to do is think about how the world is spinning, and I want you to think about how the business world is spinning and industry is spinning, because I use industry as just one big excuse for me to change the world. And business is just a big excuse for me. That's all it is, just to affect more people, to affect the world, to make my kids' lives a little bit better when they're older. That's kind of what it is. And then think about how the world's spinning, the business is spinning, and you're spinning, and think about the mindset that you have inside of this world. And think about what we were talking about, Neil just said a minute ago, when you walk in a museum. And let me just take you to, it was summer of about 2009. And my colleague Courtney Farrell and I were in Chicago. We just finished a project with Crate & Barrel, the furniture company, and we had a half a day. And when you're doing anything domestic with our company, Profit, what you do is in the side of the company you're working on, you have to spend a half a day in that city spending time getting inspired wherever you are. So we went down to the Modern Museum of Art down in Chicago, beautiful green lawn. We walk in, it's a summer day. And as we walk in, we see all these people kind of walking in, trudging up the steps, and they walk in, and then all of a sudden they pay their admission, and they walk in and they see the world. And it's Baroque, and it's sculpture, and it's postmodern, and it's museums, and it's videography, and it's all this beautiful art, and all of a sudden they're inspired. And then what happens when they walk outside? Shh-kum. It just all closes in on them, and then all of a sudden they're in this world and not the museum mentality, they're in life mentality. It gets all very close and very optically smaller. And so what we started to think about, we wrote down in this card, museum mentality. It's all about a museum mentality. And we wrote this down on this card right here. From Baroque to postmodern to hieroglyphics to paintings to sculptures to videos, every turn is something new, something unexpected and delightful. You're inspired. You feel right then the moment, right? But then how do you feel in work and life generally? Is that generally the way you feel? Imagine the way you feel in a museum. Imagine your open receptivity to it and the inspiration that's just pouring into you. Feel that, right? Now, is that the way it feels every day inside of your business environment? Is that the way you feel? Yay? Nay? Yay with a yes? No's. Generally, is it a little different? Raise your hand. A little different, right? Just a touch. But the fact is you're paying a huge admission fee with what you're spending time on right now, because that's, in fact, the admission fee is kind of your life. It's what you're paying. You're paying that right now to spend all the time on this stuff, and if you're not being inspired, why not? And so what I want to do with you is just give you a framework and something around. So if you just imagine museum mentality up here and thinking it's just one optic for thinking about how I can be more inspired on a day-to-day level and actually make it a discipline and not making something that's just always hopeful and serendipitous and kind of stuff that just lightning strikes, but actually purposeful. And then taking that inspiration, applying to good creative thinking, and then moving it into innovations that move and shape the world, right? So making it a discipline. Inspiration and discipline. Counterintuitive, yes. Very disruptive, interesting, cool. Here's where we are. So it's inspiration by demand first. And the inspiration by demand is when you think about all that archives, that imagine knowledge management, all the things that make knowledge management up. It's collecting, it's archiving, it's repeating, it's telling the story, it's displaying, all those kind of things. But you need to fill yourself up and you need to actually create your on-demand inspiration. So on-demand TV, yes, I can watch a movie right now. The Fighter, who hasn't seen The Fighter, by the way? The Fighter? Oh my, you have to see The Fighter. It's one of the most glorious, beautiful movies. I said that, I just imagined flipping to the on-demand The Fighter, because I got to watch The Fighter again. I'm flying back to the States today. I'm going to watch The Fighter again for the 9th time, because it's on demand on my iPad, and then I'm going to do it. I'm just going to do it 9 times. So I want you to have the on-demand inspiration. I want you to be able to access it at any time. And when you think about on-demand inspiration, you need to fill yourself up. And one of the ways I fill myself up is every year, for the last 6, I've gone on something called a radical sabbatical. And a radical sabbatical is when you work at our company for over 5 years, you get a month off. Well, since I'm one of the founders and one of the leaders, I take every year a month off. And I just go do it. And it's beyond my PTO and all that classic clinical vacation stuff. And I go spend a month in New York with my family in Soho on this little street called Bleecker, and we live in a little artist loft, and we go eat pinkberry, we go to kids' bookshops, we go to museums, and we go just walk around and sit and observe. We soak it in and take it in. In the period of last summer's radical sabbatical, I filled out 3,000 of these cards. 3,000. That's how many a day? For the math guys? 100, right? That's a lot. I was so hoping someone would say 100 because I said it. I wasn't thinking very quickly, and I didn't have the number in my head. 3,000 of these cards. I'm on Benadryl. I'm sorry. I'm drying out. So 3,000 cards, and I filled them up. And one of them was when I had to fly away off-site to go away, and this guy picked me up, Spencer, who was the driver in the town car, and it was his own town car. It was spick and span. I said, Spencer, this is an amazingly clean car. How'd you do it? He goes, I get it detailed twice a week, and I actually have 397,000 miles on it. And so Spencer became this archive thing that we have kind of in my head. And then 2 months later, I then have a project with a client, and the client says, I'm looking for somebody that's really about meticulous, about the meticulous of things, and have a real sense for kind of ownership. And we brought Spencer in, put him in front of a big company, and there it was. Another so radical sabbaticals. And yeah, you can use drivers from town cars that are magical. And then another one is the idea of engineering serendipity, kind of engineering things in your life to think about this line. Experience everything to empathize with everyone. Experience everything to empathize with everyone. And as I had that line kind of floating around in my head, up came this thing. And so I'm in Phoenix getting a Mexican meal, not a very good one, and there I was standing there paying the bill, and behind me, behind the cash register, was a magazine article that said, you got to have these 10 drinks in life. Number one is you have to have a sidecar at the St. James in London. You have to have a mint julep at the Penn Dennis Club on Derby Day. You have to have a gimlet at any sleazy lounge in L.A. You have to have a Coke at the San Diego Zoo. You have to have a gin and tonic at the Mandarin Club at $15. Yeah, you got to pay the $15. You have to have a spiked lemonade at Prune in the Lower East Side, Manhattan. You have to have a Sazerac at Smith & Mills in Tribeca. You have to have a Bellini at San Pedro in Italy, and a Stroh's beer in the bleachers at Tiger Park. And so I have had 7 out of those 9. because I am filling my coffers. I'm filling up my inspiration on demand so I can tap into the experience of sitting in the bleachers with the Tigers losing 9-2, but talking to the person next to me who was Croatian while I'm Serbian, and I'm going to tap into that one point because I empathize with him as I experienced everything. A beer in Tiger Stadium in the bleachers. Not the good seats, but the bleachers. Another one, just by the way, filling your coffers and having stuff around you. Does anyone not know that you can get Rolling Stones for lifetime for $100? You need to have that thing just coming to your monthly kind of delivery every month for a lifetime, just to fill your on-demand, just to know that you've got stuff coming in all the time. The second one is inspiration by delight. Let's go to inspiration by design. And inspiration by design is when you actually put yourself by design, designing your life in a greater likelihood of creating a better level of inspiration. Let me give you the first one. So TEDx, TED has been a part of my life for like the last 10 years, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar came out and spoke. I don't know if you guys remember when Kareem came out and spoke. And he had a not very good fitting suit on, and he kind of stood up there and he said, I'm not a public speaker, I'm a basketball player and a legend, but I actually, when I got the call to come speak at TED, I realized one thing, that I ought to pay any amount of money and travel any distance to get inspired by people that might inspire me. And it was actually him actually making the motion, just like you make the motion today. You actually created, by design, a better way of getting inspired. You're designing your life to get inspired. Here's another one, Chaos Pilots. I'm involved with Chaos Pilots, and it's this amazing university in Aarhus, Denmark. Anyone familiar with Aarhus, Denmark, and Chaos Pilots? Crazy cool educational format. So talk about designing for inspiration. Educational format, we learned from the Khan Academy. It's all up for grabs right now. Chaos Pilots, founded by a guy 20 years ago, Uffe Elbeck, said, it's not about all that complexity and all that pedagogical theory and stuff. It's really, you got to think about some stuff, and then you got to design it, and then you got to execute on it. And so for a 3-year Master's of Education in Aarhus, Denmark, that's being respected by the Minister of Culture in Denmark, you can get a degree from the Chaos Pilots. In the first year, you think about it. In the second year, you design it. In the third year, you do it. And I'll give you one example of someone that's done something fascinating by designing something beautiful to allow inspiration into it. By design, that educational format allowed Michael, who is a soccer player, to say, I love soccer, and I think Tibet ought to have a FIFA-sanctioned soccer team. And it doesn't. And with all its riff and all of its complexity around China, I think Tibet could really benefit by having that. And so what he did was the first year thought about it, and he called me and we talked. The second year he designed it, and he met with the Dalai Lama and FIFA in Paris. In the third year he called me and said, Andy, I need you to fly to Greenway because I'd like you to place the ball down for the friendly between Greenway and Tibet because, by the way, Tibet has a FIFA-sanctioned soccer team. He's 21 years old. He's doing that kind of stuff. That inspiration by design, by designing a nice educational format, unleashed his potential. Another one, by design. Bob Kennard. I'm in Napa Valley. I'm with a group of executives. We're looking at all types of things. High-tech company, growing like mad and very dysfunctional. We took them outside of their world and put them into an interesting design conversation and said, we'd like you to meet Bob Kennard, the organic farmer in Napa. And Bob walked out and he said, yes, that field over there is where we make all the mushrooms for Per Se, the 5-star restaurant in San Francisco. And every day that hippie van takes all those mushrooms down to Per Se and they cook them up. And so all the executives were just completely baffled at what they saw. They didn't see this pristine, beautiful lawn that has there where you would expect all the perfect mushrooms to be made for the 5-star restaurant. What they saw was a rough and tumble, weed-infested, tractor-rusted, ugly mess over there. And they said, we don't get it, we don't get it, we don't get it. And he said, oh, contraire, you silly executives. What I need you to think about harder is the fact that I've designed for its inspiration, I've designed the inspiration in that field to get the net. And instead of having a row of plants, 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 I have a row of plants and a row of weeds, a row of plants and a row of weeds, and a row of plants and a row of weeds, because it needs time to breathe. And when you design your life for inspiration, you also need to give it time to breathe. The last one, so we've talked about inspiration by demand, on demand. We've talked about it by design, having a nice curriculum, right? It's a gender, designing your life for places and input and creating space for inspiration. And the last one is simply by delight. And it's those serendipitous lightning strikes when you sense beauty, when you see beauty, when you experience something beautiful like a hug, like I saw last night. It's outside of Itsu, right down the street, while eating sushi. I saw 2 people hug and walked away, and I took a picture of it just so I could keep that imagination in my head around the beauty that I saw. And I want you to think about inspiration by delight. And it's about George Clooney. And George Clooney is fascinating. And if you don't have a crush on George Clooney, you're just numb. I mean, any man or woman in this room, I mean, I'm married and I'm happily married to a woman named Jill who is the love of my life, but she knows I might leave her for George. And she would equally leave me for George. So it's good. We're both leaving. So let me just read something in Time magazine that was written about George Clooney. Joel Klein, the great columnist, he really had a passion for doing an article on George Clooney. And George said, he just kind of found out. And so he called him up, Joel Klein, and said, hey, Joel, I want to do a article on you. George Clooney called Joel Klein at home and said, hey, I heard you want to do an article on me. Forget about your people calling my people, etc. Why don't I come over Friday for dinner? And so Joel Klein hung up the phone and said, oh my God, George Clooney's coming to my house. And here's how the article reads. It's 6:45 on a Saturday night when the doorbell rings. A little late, Clooney hits traffic as his assistant called to say, on his way back from visiting his girlfriend in Vegas. He's wearing faded jeans, black laced-up boots, zipped-up sweater, and he looks a little less like a movie star than a normal, unbotoxed, 46-year-old unmarried guy coming over for dinner. But he also looks like he's excited to be there, because wherever George Clooney is, he's also there. It's just delightful, right? George Clooney's a delight. Joel Klein's a delight. And so looking for those moments, and when I read this, I went, oh, so loving. I love this man. Even more, I love Joel Klein. I love Time magazine. I love George Clooney. I love it all. So it's by delight. And the last one is just this guy named Michael Kopis, and having those, looking for and being very conscious for looking those pieces of delight in life that'll change you consciously to be more inspired, to be more inspiring. And so Michael Kopis is driving to work years ago, and as he drives by this horrific accident, he gets moved. He gets emotionally moved. He's a doctor. He arrives at the hospital, starts talking about the idea that isn't there a better way of getting that patient treatment? And all of a sudden, the conversation moved from that hospital to the medical industry to, and all of a sudden this thing was invented called the Medic One. And the Medic One is that helicopter who in fact doesn't have they don't have to get the ambulance to the person and then to the hospital. They actually bring the medical instruments to the person in the accident. Irony played out that about 20 years later, Michael Kopis was driving home from work, had a cardiac arrest, hit a tree, and his own invention saved his life. Crazy. And I'm not saying that inspiration is always going to be a lifesaver. But if you really think about it by demand and by design and by delight, we might just actually consciously shape this world a little bit better. We might be consciously a little bit happier, business may be happier, and the world might be happier. So a few things that I believe and a few things that I suspect. Or as Peter King says, things I think I'm thinking. I believe that inspiration is the way to a better person, business, and world. I believe that you can manufacture an approach to making inspiration a discipline through demand, design, and delight. I suspect that a touch more of museum mentality inside of all of us can make a better world, a better business, and a better person for all the things that matter. Peace. Cheese.